Welcome to our new podcast episode of The Spirit of Yoga. Wisdom in Motion is today welcoming our wonderful guest Radasi, and we are talking with her about transmutation, sublimation, which seems to be a cryptic term, but we will go right to the bottom of this truly important, essential yogic concept, but even more important, yogic practice. So, for that special circumstance, I welcome one of my early teachers, one of my dearest yogic friends on the path, one of those heroes of modern yoga who has been carrying the light of the heart of yoga, this essence, this existential, genuine root of yoga. The wonderful yogini Radasi has been carrying on in her own heart, in her own practice, in her own growing, flourishing community, passing it on around the globe and making sure that the genuine roots of yoga are preserved and handed down towards the new generation. And she's a beacon of light, a hero of this path. I admire her. I adore her. I'm so thankful that Radasi is with us today in this amazing journey of the spirit of yoga. Welcome from Greece, live with us here in the studio. Radasi, namaste.
Oh, namaste, Burkhard. Oh, thank you for sharing your kind words.
So maybe we start with a bit of background, context, personal anecdote, where and how we got to know each other. And then later on, we go actually through those anecdotes into the content, into the topic of these practices which help us to get uplifted out of the heaviness into the clarity and the light, how we can transform ourselves with these yogic practices, how we can actually reap the benefits of these contemplative practices of breath work, working with the chakras, the energies, doing profound, authentic meditations. And Radasi has been on this path not for years, but literally for decades. And this is also how we met in the early days. We connected roughly around 17 and a half years ago, I would estimate from the top of my head. It might be 18 or 16 and a half, but I still remember the early days when we were on a small island in Thailand, and there was a community of seriously dedicated practitioners and educational programs which were made for wandering nomads, travelers, backpackers, and spiritual seekers. And the community, the yoga school, was about introducing those dedicated, heartfelt seekers to the systematic education about yoga. And it was a long-term program there. And Radasi was one of my teachers. When I arrived some 17, 18 years ago, early as a rookie in Asia, I stranded on this wonderful tropical island in Thailand. And Radasi there was one of my early teachers in these advanced courses. And she taught me so much about this heartfelt attitude, about this dedication, this enthusiasm, which she was one of the kind of pillars of the community. And I was so inspired by her and the other advanced practitioners who were so dedicated already back then to their paths and were going so strong in their practice of daily regularity. It was common in the community that people were practicing not only 2-3 hours per day, but 4 hours was kind of like a good average. Some of the expert and dedicated heroes were doing like 6-8 hours per day. And then on top of it, we had like these monthly 10-day silent retreats. And this is where then Radasi and me went a bit deeper into this practice journey together. So that is my version how we got to know each other, Radasi. I'm curious about your perspective, how you remember those good old days. What brought you to this island? What was the flavor, the frequency for you in those good old days when we met in the spiritual community there?
Yeah, wow. When we take ourselves back like this, I'm just so grateful to have had that experience and that space for us to be so dedicated to our practice, because mobile phones and all this, what we experience now, didn't exist then. I didn't even have a mobile. Oh. And that really gave us so much of a focus that I believe this is what allowed us to all go much deeper when I contemplate that. And we were dedicated, and I give so much gratitude to the teachings that we received, because it planted so much inspiration, so much of this fire of aspiration. And because I believe we were all together and we were all genuinely seeking, it was like a group effort almost, even though we were all practicing in our little huts on our own. There was a certain field of dedication within our community. And yeah, I'm so grateful for that period. So grateful. And then, like you say, our teacher, Sahajanandi, he could then, we were all totally ready when he came and wanted to depart the 10-day silent retreats. And he was giving them every month.
Exactly.
And so we'd go into 10 days silence. We'd go into just breathing in the heart for 10 days in Mauna, no speaking. Then we'd come out for the remainder of the 18 days of the month. And then we were going back in again and again.
Exactly like this. Exactly. This is where kind of we really gained momentum from this anyhow already dedicated community with the daily practice and all the educational courses and the workshops and the teacher trainings and all the rest of it already rolling in full momentum. And then we really upped our momentum even further with these monthly 10-day silent meditation retreats. So a spiritual heart meditation practice, which is similar to a Buddhist Vipassana mindfulness insight meditation retreat, as a 10-day silent group setting, going into like full day, whatever, something like 10, 12 hours, 14 hours of being in the hall together. Out of that, maybe 8, 9, 10 hours of dedicated meditation practice, and going into that rhythm, as Radasi mentioned, on a monthly basis. So 10 days into the retreat, and it's kind of like, of course, you're going to join next month's retreat again. It's like, of course, like we only have 5 retreats this year, 6 opportunities to go into the next retreat. So of course, we're going to come for the next one again. And then in between the retreats, we just, prepare another workshop, teach another class, back to our daily practice at home in the little huts. And some other, we barely even went to the beach. Like we didn't even have time much for beach life. Occasionally being like peacefully present there, but it was like not. The island by now changed a bit. I remember when I went back recently, it's a bit more like hippie. We have a bonfire at the beach, live music, acro yoga, and a bit more festival, hippie lifestyle. That's also amazing. But we were not even into that, even though the meditation hall was directly at the beach, basically. We barely really had this kind of not like nature enjoyment. We were just very internalized in these intensive practices. And that gave us so much momentum in, like you described, also as a collective field of going deeper together. And in these, sometimes in the afternoon, towards the end of the retreat, like 2-hour sittings of not moving a finger for hours and sitting in the afternoon heat together in this small hall and like going into the altered states of consciousness together. The high vibe was like really exceptional. So I have such fond memories of these really profound times we shared there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that little glimpse, just taking myself back there and appreciating it so much. It was such a gift. Yeah. And to try to equate to that now, I mean, I appreciate that you will know how it feels to just balance now our sadhana life, our practice life, with all the responsibilities that come not being in that bubble. It's a different field.
Very much. Exactly. Because now we're in the situation that you're running for like more than a decade already, your yoga teacher trainings in Rishikesh, in the North Indian yoga capital, in the shores of the Ganga foothills of the Himalayas there. You've been doing so many practices, advanced courses in India, guiding groups to the sources of yoga. You have your own ongoing base in Greece where you're offering your own advanced yoga teacher trainings, advanced tantric teachings, a whole community, a whole momentum. And that, of course, as you were just mentioning, that, of course, has quite some responsibilities in organizational necessities, logistics, and all the rest of what it requires to facilitate the process of flourishing, growing community. Same for us in our Akasha Yoga Academy, going strong with our online courses and all the people supporting the community, the content, and all of that, which of course is more or less time intensive and inevitably reduces the quantity, the sheer hours of the practice which we used to do in the past. Now we have less, no, we don't have 8 hours per day available. We don't have every month 10 days silent of just going offline, disappearing. So in many ways, of course, our practice shifted more to the yoga in daily life. Our service of teaching, of sharing, holding space in the community is more a karma yoga, a seva, a selfless service. So in many ways, it's a different period in our lives, in our spiritual journey, which of course brings a different flavor, a different transition. So I would be curious if you could share with our community your journey through that. I've been talking a lot, but I feel it's time for you to take over and that we give more space also for you to share your journey across. How did you at all get started with it? Just in a nutshell, some highlights for people to get inspired, like, wow, this sounds like a wonderful yogic career, a life dedicated to yoga. How do I get started with that? And then what kind of steps can I anticipate on that journey? How can I live the yogic life, make the yogic lifestyle not just stylish, but authentic, genuine, and dedicated to the roots of yoga? Share about your insights. What encouraged you? What allowed you to change your life, to actually commit to that journey, to in a way have this early form of transmutation, which we might call transformation of different areas of your life, and how that meditation practice and this yogic journey helped you along the way. A very open question. You can take it wherever your life wants to be shared.
I will share quite openly and honestly, because I feel like it's really nice, because as we understand, we're both on the same page in really wanting to make yoga accessible for everybody and to make it that whatever is our past, present, whatever's going on, we know that we can still access yoga, spirituality. So I'll just give a little bit of a background for people to hopefully be inspired. So I started really young with prayer, actually. I didn't have the most easiest of childhood. And I found that I naturally prayed as a child as a way to ease my uncomfortable feelings. Yeah. So this was always really inside me. It wasn't something that so much came from the outside. And then when I was 19, I found yoga. I was studying to work in psychotherapy, and I came to yoga to find some way. I felt like I intuitively needed something to keep me steady and calm. So it was an intuition that brought me to yoga. Fortunately, it was available in the place that I was studying in the college. And then this introduced, and I fell in love with that. It was more hatha yoga, more physical based, but I remember my teacher, she did some really beautiful little tratika exercises where we would just gaze at a flower and just merge into the flower. Something so simple like this was very easy for myself at that time as a teenager to connect with the practice. And I remember after that particular technique, leaving that class in some difference. I didn't know back then, but it was just some altered state. Anyway, I was young, wild, and free in this period. I do have to say, I was partying a lot, enjoying the life. I appreciated to dance a lot and really enjoy myself. And so I was balancing, believe it or not, yoga life along with some party life. So there was, I guess, we can say now it's maybe a contradiction. The yoga path is helping us to purify and bring more stability. Whereas that other side of my life was a bit wild and the opposite of purification, if I say, to drink alcohol and various things like this. But I still went to yoga. I still practiced. And I tapered off a little bit in my early 20s. But then when I was 23, it just swallowed me up. And it was almost like I was ready then to let go of that part of me that was creating this diversity. And I remember becoming vegetarian then. It was really easy for me to become that. I feel like the yoga was just steadily purifying me. My teacher was very gentle, gradual. It was just an easy kind of opening of myself. And so when I decided to become vegetarian, and then I really came into the yoga, I was taking one-to-one classes with my teacher. I was just ready then. And then I left England 2 years later after this. And then that was just a radical shift in my life that freed me up to do what we've just spoken about. I was traveling, backpacking for a couple of years, and then find myself in Thailand when I was 26. So, and then that was it, through the influence of what we've just said, the community, because community is so important to have that inspiration from the others around us. It's very easy to get swallowed up into doubt, perhaps, or lacking that dedication if we don't have the Sangha or a community. And so, of course, teachers can inspire us, and they inspired me so much. And my friends, my yogini friends inspired me. And then there's just no turning back at a certain point. Yeah. There's no turning back. I feel there is a yearning of the soul to constantly peel away what is not serving our highest good. And we can refer to this as the transmutation. And it's like sometimes we think, oh my God, how do I transmute this or that? But it really, for me, I felt like, oh my God, I don't really have the skills to transmute that heaviness of my past or the heaviness of all that partying years. How can like little Radasi really do that, And this is where all these wonderful techniques come, and Sangha, the community and guidance. And what I see is the most important thing in coming from then to where I am now is never giving up, never stopping, never losing the consistency of a focus on spirituality and our, and very simply said, on our aspiration to become natural, come back to our natural state. We can, in our minds, learn about all these great abilities we can achieve through the practices or opening our heart and expanding. And sometimes these things are a million miles away from what our reality is in our practice. And then those beautiful moments, we just come back to the simplicity. We come back to that simple contentment. And this gives them that propel to just keep going. And this is what's taken me now. Is 20 years ago, I was on Thailand for the first time. So it's 20 years later. And I don't have time for these 10-day retreats anymore, but the life is still the same.
Exactly. But in another way, still going strong.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no compromise.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. From the outside, it might seem like a compromise because, like, oh, you've been practicing so much. And then like, oh, now you're not practicing so much. It's a compromise. No, but it's not. Because it's just another step on the path and another level of integration, another deeper embodiment, another period on this cycle on the spiritual path.
Yes. And something, Burkhard, it's like my guru now, my Guruji, I've been with him now nearly 12 years, it will be now in December. And he says very clearly, when we receive all of these teachings, if they just go inside and we just get filled up, they have some effect and they're beneficial, of course. But I don't know if it's just a time on this planet at the moment, or if this is generally the law of nature. But to give these teachings to others, he says, brings more spiritual development. It's like we have to give back to the nature what we've received.
Very much.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's a truth, a wisdom, which is also shared in many other lineages and traditions. What just comes to my mind when we were there in Southeast Asia, the Theravada Buddhism is so omnipresent with the local culture around this mindfulness meditation, the monasteries, and all the valuing generally of the teacher is huge in Asia. The elder, the senior, the teacher, and of course, very specifically, the Dhamma teacher, the even also the Dhamma practitioner, the one who is cultivating and practicing those spiritual techniques on the different levels. They just naturally, intuitively, organically have this high reputation and high status in the society. Just this acknowledgement, just this recognition of the value of spiritual practice is just omnipresent in the, generally speaking, Southeast Asian Indian culture. It's just a given that of course you would respect the monks, the nuns who are giving their life full time to this practice. It's like, this is, yeah, like you're doing the highest, you're preserving the essence, the kind of the pearls of wisdom, the jewels of our culture are preserved by you, by your dedication, by your regular practice. So that is in many ways a given that the sharing of these wisdom teachings is a spiritual practice in itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember just recently, actually, because every year I stay in our guru's ashram for 2 months, and now we are teaching the advanced sadhanas there, the advanced spiritual practices, like their initiations actually from my guru, and we are there supporting. And I remember I was really feeling, I need to go have this silent retreat, and I usually have one a year where I and it's really not like what we had, but at least it's there. And in this period of 2 months at the ashram, I was really feeling the call to have silence. And so I asked my guru, I said, please, can I just take like a week's silence? And he said, no, you're here in that role of responsibility and guiding. And no, it is not what is needed. And it was an eye-opener for me, actually, in just really settling into what is and surrendering to that Dharma. Yeah. But at the same time, Burkhard, I'm really feeling that need to carve more periods in my year where I do switch off from teaching. In the next Navaratri, once this training is finished here now, I will take 2 weeks during Navaratri and I won't even teach. Fortunately, my husband will hold the retreat, and I will just be doing my sadhana actually in the background. So I'm starting to feel again the need to create more space for that, even more. Yeah.
Wonderful. Exactly, because it's both ingredients. It's I feel in some ways it makes sense as you described it also in your biographical journey, in your chronological unfolding of the path, which of course for each and every seeker and finder that will be different with so many individual factors and idiosyncratic variations of this and that, of course. But there can be some generalizable trends, tendencies that of course we start somewhere, and some people start with a rich, strong background, whatever. Some people would say, no, my parents were already spiritual. A student would tell us like, oh, My mother was a yoga teacher. My father is a Reiki energy healer, etc. No, if one gets born into such a culture, subcultural context, of course, one has a different start than other people, etc. Of course, there's variations, but still, we all start somewhere, and we start with intensified practice, more or less, not right away, but we start with some practices, and then we intensify the practice. We go deeper into our own exploration with interruptions, disturbances, kids being born in families and jobs, locations changes and surprises and breaks for years and decades and doing other things. And of course, but no, basic practice, intensified practice, and sooner or later starting to share some of that, either formally or informally. And then going more either into the worldly life, mothers being in the selfless service in their families, etc. In our case, more being in service of our students, which I consider to be my children who I'm caring for like a parent, and making sure that everything is well arranged no, for their university, for advanced education, and so on. So, everybody in their own way. And then for us, it's more the teaching. For others, it might be more like this parenthood, caring for the spiritual education of one's children. And that's a selfless service and a wonderful experience in itself of letting go of the ego, of being in service. And this is in a way what you were describing with your teacher. Like, no, now is your time for service. Now you're not going to take a silent retreat now. Your time is now here to be of service that others can receive. And that can be no, like a turning around. I used to have more time for myself before I had kids. I used to practice more before I was teaching in a community, etc. But now is the time to be of service. But then sooner or later, and in the same meantime, we of course need to find the balance that we keep up our daily practice, that we carve out time during the year to have also intensified personal practice retreats. And exactly, I also try at least once per year to go for a silent meditation retreat. Last year I was in a Cuenca Vipassana retreat here in Bali, where it's also very genuine, dedicated, full-time, full power practices. And I loved it so much. It was like, oh my God, retreats. Like I'm just going to close the yoga school and I just go offline and I'll just disappear in retreats again. It's the better life. But no, okay, then life calls me back. Okay, like, okay, no, now we got to publish a meditation teacher training. Okay, let's prepare for that. So it's an alternating, it's a dance between those worlds. And both of them are a joy. But of course, we need to counterbalance everything in its due time.
Yeah, and I feel that you touched on something so relevant for so many people, people that have children, because sometimes people are coming to the other in spirituality and then they go in the path of parenthood and feel like somehow they can't be as dedicated. And the irony is that they are even more dedicated. They are, because this is 24 hours seva. And in the traditions of India, to have a child, especially for the first 5 years, there is no expectation from any other sadhana other than the sadhana of having a child. Yes. Is what is the focus for the parents in that period. And it's really such an emphasis that remains in the Indian culture that we didn't yet translate that over to the Western interpretation of spirituality, that the children themselves are the sadhana.
True, I fully agree. And I see it in my surroundings here in Bali with other yoginis having children and observing the sheer necessity, the inevitable intensity, which comes especially in the early weeks and months, but continues also over the years, if not to say decades, of having one or even several children. And whichever the life circumstances are, it is very demanding in many ways. And it's such an organic, natural teaching of selflessness, as you were describing, which in some ways in yoga ashrams, in monasteries, in spiritual communities, we try to imitate a similar intensity of full momentum dedication in karma yoga. We try to kind of give a similar experience, but nothing can compare to the 24/7 responsibility of a 3:45 a.m. Screaming kid next to you in the bed, waking you up for another breastfeeding round, and just unexplicable 1 hour of screaming in the middle of the night. Like the selflessness which nature life requires of mothers and parents in these months and years of the young childhood of their kids. It's completely kind of unreplicable, and it's such a profound life teaching. And like you described, the mothers would have a concern that they're missing out. I would also like to do a 10-day retreat, but I cannot because I have my kids. But no, you're doing the best selfless service and ego detachment retreat. Also, in a 10-day silent retreat, we try to detach from the ego. Yeah, but it's like frequently just also upstairs, lofty thoughts and sounds nice, lip service. And we pretend to be so selfless in the retreats. But the real life, where the rubber hits the road, challenge is in parenthood. And it's in so many ways the best way to mature and grow. So, of course, everything is due season and time. Everything has its cycles and values and nuances and aspects. And one can kind of waste one's time in retreats or waste one's time in parenthood. So one can, like whatever, shadows, get lost and be whatever, frustrated and stuck. But even that, even feeling stuck is good, because then it's a sign like, okay, the old way doesn't work anymore. I got to transform. I got to transmute those old limitations and go through, come out strong, light and clear on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going beyond our limitations as well, the mental limitations that we set up, whether we put the mental limitations in our physical body when we're practicing asana, whether we experience those limitations in our meditation experience, or whether we simply feel that we have only a limit in our capacity as a human being, as a parent. Yeah, it's all helping us to just go beyond the perceived limitations, which is just the cage of the mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe you can share some personal experiences, some practical tips, tricks, how to deal with, for example, doubts about the choices, necessities, requirements in your schedule, in your daily life, practices, attitudes, and techniques, tips, tricks, which help you to overcome these apparently huge obstacles, challenges, the frustration, the daily necessities. How do you reinterpret? How do you transform your mindset? How do you transmute tendencies you described, for example, in your earlier life, how you were more on the extrovert party type of pleasure enjoyment trip, and how you shifted around that. Maybe some hands-on, like, okay, I remember I was facing this challenge and I was hitting my head against the wall for a few days, weeks, months, and then with this and that I had a breakthrough, or this helps me, or this is one of the best tips I give to my students because I've seen that so many times. Maybe you can share some nuggets, some gold pieces of your own rich experience of 2 decades full-time dedication on this path.
Yeah, I've always been quite extreme, I would say, in how I approach things, whether it would be in the extroverted life or being more interiorized. And where I am now in all of it is feeling that it's so necessary to honor what works for us and what doesn't. Of course, yoga takes us to a place where, as I said before, we go beyond limitations, which isn't always going to be comfortable. Purification of that our practices bring isn't always going to be comfortable. But what I can really see, and I don't know if it's just something I didn't see in the past, but I see it now on the trainings and people passing through, and is quite often people really need to find what works for them I don't know, somehow many people lost their center in, and I'm not saying I always had that center, but really, okay, you're faced with different styles of yoga or different styles of meditation or different techniques, and finding what ultimately brings an equilibrium inside of yourself and an authenticity. I think sometimes the practices we can often spiritually bypass what is really needing to be present in our life, whether that could be feelings, whether that could be just a simple need to take care of this physical body. Like we have an aspiration, okay, I'm going to start doing that purification technique or this particular type of fasting, and I'm going to do it next month because this is a break in my schedule. But next month arrives and we're not quite feeling strong enough for that. And I feel so important to really find what is right for us, and to go easy, because if we don't, we're going to create such a rebound in the mind of resistance. And like if we set ourselves, okay, 2 hours yoga practice every day, then I want to meditate for 1 hour, and we consistently we're not able to achieve that for whatever reason, it's going to be more self-defeating than feeling good. And we all understand this, not to overbear ourselves, but I do feel our human condition is very striving, and we are getting very disconnected from our truth. And this echoes in people being disconnected from the nature, people being disconnected from the cycles of the nature, the sun, the moon, everything that is happening there within the cycles, day and night. For those that have cycles of the hormones, the menstruation, we've become very disconnected. And so coming into an authenticity and being able to listen to what we need and setting our goals at that level and working to that, and then increasing as we know we can manage it. And if we find that our meditations more easily first thing in the morning than last thing at night, dedicate it first thing in the morning rather than doing it last thing at night when it's more of a difficulty. So just finding some wisdom actually for ourselves and in our practices.
Exactly. That wisdom of the right thing that matches our individual constitution, personality, typology, the season in our life, the season of the month, the daytime as you describe it. For me, it is summarized in one simple formulation: whatever is appropriate in this moment, in this circumstance, for me. What makes sense? Or better said, what is the wise choice? What is the appropriate response in this situation according to those circumstances? So that then, of course, we'll notice has different voices, opinions, possibilities, preferences, priorities, reasons why I would do this or that, or my belief system is that I should, internal judgments, other people's opinions, society, expectations, conditioning, and all the different elements which are kind of pulling us in this or that direction. Life circumstances, we talked about the children, the necessities, the work, and other necessities, logistics of life, seasons of the year, wherever we are at. I remember living 25 years ago in a circus caravan while studying at university in Berlin, and we lived outside in a caravan in the Berlin freezing winter, and it was just my thing to chop wood. And it was a pretty solid solid thing. I didn't go to the gym, but I was chopping wood. This just randomly came to my mind. No? Like whatever is appropriate, that was the appropriate thing to do there. So we have choice in some areas. In other areas, we have limited freedom to decide this or that. In other circumstances, we don't have any choice at all. Whatever, we just get sick, have an accident, or things happen to us, something. So, but then whatever these circumstances, they can be colorful, surprising, changing, like this or like that. So then again, whatever is appropriate. Okay, now I just had 2 kids, fresh, kindergarten age. I don't have time for 5 10-day silent meditation retreats per year. No. Okay, maybe I can somehow squeeze 1 2 in the next year when the father can take over something. Okay, you make it a priority, you make it happen. Okay, but then not feeling bad about it. That was I feel it was a subtext on your message, because we tend to not judge ourselves, think we're missing out, we beat ourselves up, other people get judgmental about our this or that choices and so on, and there's no sense in that, because like you say, then it gets almost counterproductive. You said it. Oh, I should do 2 hours of yoga asana per day, 1 hour of meditation, and so on. And then I don't manage, and then I feel so bad about myself, and then I stress out, freak out about something which should give me some peace and relaxation. And it gets paradoxical, schizophrenic sometimes, even like that. So yes.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what I see nowadays? Maybe it's always been like this, and it's just that I see it a little bit more now, but really finding what works for us, because sometimes even our choice, our style of yoga may not suit what we need at that time. We might not need a very dynamic yang practice. We might need something more yin. Or maybe yin is not what we need. We need something more dynamic. And even now when I'm teaching pranayama on these immersions, I teach with such diligence, because every day is just looking and seeing, okay, this person has too much heat in their body. So no, they're not going to do a fiery breathing technique. This person is on the menstruation. Okay, so they're not going to do this. It's like really feeling into what we need. And generally yoga is taught nowadays in a way, at least in the classes I've been to, where an instruction is given and everybody's just in the same pool and doing what everybody's doing. And this can tip us out of balance. We understand yoga is really a path of bringing the balance of the inner energies, the receptive and emissive energies, bringing that balance so that we have an equilibrium, we have that peace in the mind, that steadiness. And a lot of time, and I'll speak for myself, I sent myself out of balance with practices that didn't suit me at the time.
Yes. Exactly.
And I'm 46 now. It's like, what is it? Yeah, it's 28 years in the yoga practice itself. It's taken me now in this last 5 years where I really get it.
Exactly. It's a journey. And that's then the beauty to pass on that, life experience, that maturity, that wisdom, which comes from trying and screwing up, hitting our head against the wall in more or less painful ways. Some of them are just kind of like not really bleeding, but just detours. We just waste our time a bit here, or in hindsight, we can connect the dots more easily, as even Steve Jobs was saying. We can afterwards, in retrospect, understand more clearly, like, wow, I tried for so many months, years, like this and that. And yes, it was interesting, helpful, beneficial. But to be honest, it was kind of, I could have understood it earlier, shifted more quickly in this direction, got the point. But even that is part of the journey. There's no need for regret and, oh, I wasted my time. Not the point. It was in that moment, we tried our best with a more or less limited perspective and overview which we had. We did our best, and definitely we did. No, we were dedicated. And everybody is dedicated in their way. They have their priorities, they have their life circumstances. We all try our best wherever we are at. Then we judge each other that we should do better. But even that is like basically no sense in that, because everybody tries their best, more or less. It's quite common. It's rare, not that somebody on purpose wants to screw up. And even that, and in this moment, it's their best. So, no, we do whatever we can, whatever is appropriate in that moment. in hindsight, it's easier to be smarter. We understand, but we embrace the past, the moments as they come. We celebrate the parties and the weddings as we get invited. We make our mistakes. We learn our lessons sooner or later, and this is where we're at, and this is what we can share, and this is what inspires others. Wherever we're at, it can be very inspiring for other people to pass that on. Parents passing it on to their kids, siblings passing it on to their younger brother, sister. Beginner yoga practitioners showing their colleagues in the office how they can relax their neck, shoulders, something. It's an ongoing journey of just being together on this path of finding the appropriate response to life's challenges.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It gives us that invaluable life experience.
Exactly. Good. So I feel we've reached a point where we can conclude a first round of our sharing, even though I would love to continue for another 1.5 hours. But we might postpone that for another meeting. We were already starting to brainstorm about possibilities to share about one of your many, many other passions and expertises, which is the kids yoga. And we would love to receive some of your best practices, tips, and tricks. So our audience, your community, whoever's receiving your profound sharings and expertise can also benefit in a future episode from your skill, experience, and expertise on, again, what we just talked about, passing on that wisdom of yoga to the children. The kids yoga is such a joyful area of the yogic teachings. And in many ways, I feel when you were teaching me 18 years ago, 17 and a half years ago, you had the skill of teaching the joyful enthusiasm of a kids yoga class to backpacking adults. So I feel we had the joy of a kids yoga class while being in an educational program and having this joyful curiosity, this freshness of the renowned beginner's mind as it is cultivated in Zen Buddhism, this freshness, this openness, this open-hearted embracing of the wonder, the magnificence of life, which in your inspiration, in your own enthusiastic perception of life back then and still now shines through so apparently. And it was one of really the strong inspirations and invitations for me to step full-time onto this path. Because like you also mentioned, you tend to be a bit extreme, meaning all in and going strong on the things in your life, namely the spiritual path. And I also have this tendency of going strong and all in. And you were in many ways one of my early role models to just like, yeah, and we're going to go full momentum with a smile through the challenges. And we invite the intensity of this spiritual journey. And I still resonate with that vibe. And I still feel the gratitude for that door and that heart which you opened for me and many others. And in many ways, I could say, without the inspiration which I received from you and similar teachers in those times, I wouldn't be in any way on this full-time dedication to the spiritual path. So thank you, Radasi, for your dedication, for your role model, how you shine brightly, how you inspire your community. Maybe you can mention for a moment what your sharing is about nowadays, what you are passing on. The students who are now receiving the inspiration, as I received it from you 17 years ago, what is now alive for you? What do you pass on to the newbies, the seasoned practitioners who want to take the next step? What is your heartfelt contribution? What do you pass on to the people who come into your community, into your educational programs?
Well, yeah. When you were speaking, thank you so much. It's really lovely to get that echo of inspiring you for all them years ago, and that it still lives inside of you. It like this just yeah, it really touches me. So thank you for sharing that. And I have to say, I don't know if anything really changed that much. I remember being with your group and teaching my love of the sun through our practices, the Surya Namaskar, and nothing changed really. Now we make Chandra Namaskar as well, because I've become very dedicated actually in the last 10 years of balancing the lunar and solar energies and the necessity of that, as actually an innate essence of Hatha Yoga. And so I really went into this. That would be, I guess, a little bit of a difference of what we experienced. And I take the opportunity, whether it be on the trainings that we have here, to start the day actually in connection with the sun. So we practice outside, we practice with the rising sun, practice with the moon as well. Like now the moon is in the phase where we can still see an almost full moon in the mornings when we start our practice in the sky. So making that very direct connection to the aspects of this world, or the aspects of divinity that we're connecting to, because what I've realized to be so important for me, but also in teaching, is to not make things too esoteric, not to make things become imagination or a little bit out there and unattainable. I feel it's so important to just bring it back to this reality of what we perceive as human beings here in this body on this planet. And as Hatha Yoga is really steeped in this honoring the inner, not just the outer sun moon energy, but the inner lunar solar, it's very integrated now. And I've been laughing recently on the advanced retreat that we offer here in Greece. You know, we're up before the sun breaks in the morning, just looking at the stars, looking at the planets. And then when the sun rises, we're full on in our practice. And I was thinking, am I creating a sun cult here? Because we were so like into it, you know, and I feel so happy because I see it brings the meaning to what we are doing, particularly with Surya Namaskar. And then we can take that connection into the whole yoga practice. So we are connecting with the elements. We can call them chakras, but I think at the beginning of the exploration of chakras, it's better we just speak about the elements. Everybody knows what the earth is. Everybody knows water. Everybody knows fire and air, and has at least a concept of space. So weaving that entry point into the yoga now when teaching Tantra yoga is become very important, and I feel makes it more real and authentic for people. So this would be how things are there on that level. I've already said in terms of the other practices, pranayama, just ensuring an absolute sensitivity and awareness of what practices are right for us. Pranayama is such an advanced practice, and to approach it with such a steadiness and knowing and tuning into what feels right. Some days it might just be Nadi Shodhan is the perfect thing, and only that, because we might need to create that balance between the inner lunar and solar energies, and knowing how to feel that. And usually you can see it in people's minds if they are steady and ungrounded or irritated and not focused, then there's an imbalance there. And so tuning back into that inner balance is, I think, more fundamental than trying to do a lot of strong, elaborate techniques. Otherwise, you just spin yourself into more unbalance. So yeah, this is what's become very important. And of course, cultivating practice geared towards traditional Tantra as well, which is like a main aspect of what I bring into our trainings and retreats and online support. having that people can access traditional tantra that has zero to do with sexual content. Of course, there are aspects of the ancient tantra that do, but they are very minimal and traditionally are rarely given to people, never mind the masses. So the traditions that we share involve mantra, yantra. Those that are close to us in the practices can be a part of fire ceremony as well, like actually in a part of the ceremony, not just observing. And it's all on this path for us about awakening what is already inside of us. Sometimes we look at these rituals or these techniques and we think, oh, what's going on? We're kind of working with something external. But the most beautiful explanation for me is that all of these practices, including sun salutation and moon salutation, is awakening that energy inside of us. And you know this, Burkhard, the more we can bring it as an internal experience, the more deeper it goes. And it's not just a mental concept. Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, my big part and practice in the life are these traditional practices from India. Mantra meditation is very important for us. Any opportunity we have to create yantra and invite different divine energies, whether it would be Lakshmi. We recently had a Lakshmi Vishnu yantra here. And then slowly, by keep repeating these mantras and opening the light inside of us, we open more in our inner Shakti and inner light. And this has become such a dedication for me.
Wonderful. The key word for me on that is the beauty of simplicity. Coming back to the roots, the fundamental forces of nature, the sun, the moon, the day, the night, the stars, the sky, the elements, like you say, the earth, water, fire, air, the spaciousness, all these simple things. You mentioned even how one of the relevant ingredients of your early practice, you said, this looking at a flower, this adoration of the perfection of nature. This is in some ways how you said you started your path, with that admiration of the beauty of simplicity. We were meeting that practice in the advanced retreats when in Kashmir Shaivism, the non-dual Shaiva Tantra, we find in scriptures exactly that adoration, on the one hand, of the external things, but also, as you said, internalizing the practice, the forces within ourselves, adoration of our own heart, going deeper into our spiritual essence, feeling the embodiment of those elements within ourselves, and cultivating this not only mindfulness, but profound awareness of the depth of existence in our own journey. So always back to the roots, keep it simple, as you described, also not being too much conceptual around it, otherwise it becomes a lip service, a wishful thinking, but always down to earth, dedicated to the practice, the heartfelt enthusiasm, the trust that we are supported and can go through any obstacle by just with continuity and dedication, being committed to our own evolution, transformation, transmutation, and then, as we talked about earlier, passing on this wisdom, this insight, which we received from our teachers and masters, handing it down, handing it over, better said, in the most pure and refined way to the people who we come across in these various circumstances. Thank you so much, Radasi, for sharing the inspiration. I'm very much looking forward to the next edition where we go more into the kids yoga. Maybe we get Kirsten, our other podcast host, on board for that, so we can explore other applications and direct implementations of this beginner mind, of this excitement and enthusiasm, which shines so naturally from your open heart. Thank you for being with us here today. Thank you for showing up. If anybody's interested to follow Radasi more deeply, Satyaloka is, I think, the key word, which you can find online on the different platforms. online offerings. Find her in Greece, travel with her to India, to the roots of the ancient, authentic tantric tradition, and feel connected with her community. Thank you. I still feel connected from heart to heart. Thank you so much, Radasi, for showing up, taking the time, making the time. I know you're in the middle of a teacher training right now. Thank you for making it happen. The fire ceremony there is waiting for you. Best wishes, blessings, much gratitude. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Burkhard. I love you very much. I love everything that you're doing, all of your team. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Radasi. This was the Spirit of Yoga. Thank you for being with us in the Wisdom in Motion. Go deeper, journey with us to the next levels. Best wishes for your explorations. See you very soon, and namaste.